We're like fish in water. We're humans in conversation. We don't know the waters we're swimming in. These are words of our guest today, Chuck Wisner. And it just tells you, just gives you a hint at, just the issue that we're plagued with today, and that is communication. And you as a leader, if you find yourself asking yourself this, and that is why? Why? Despite communicating more than anything else in our lives, we are so terrible at it. So, how can we as leaders improve, and what can we do to improve communication amongst our teams? So many leaders out there are just simply crushed by this question. And you know what? You don't have to be anymore, because today, my guests, Chuck Wisner and myself, we tackle exactly that. And once you're done this podcast episode today, you're going to walk away with 3 key takeaways. The first being how to recognize and break communication patterns. You have to understand that we unconsciously adapt communication styles from family, culture, our experience. So by bringing awareness to these patterns, we begin to shift unproductive habits and lead to more effective conversations. Number 2, leverage 4 types of conversations. You're going to understand the difference in when to use and when not to use storytelling, collaborative, creative, and commitment conversations. And this is going to be essential for your success. Why? Because knowing which type you're in and applying the right tools can transform meetings from battlegrounds into places of mutual learning and innovation. And then finally, the 4 archetypal questions to unlock conversations by gently uncovering desires, concerns, power dynamics, and standards, both in ourselves as well as whoever we're communicating with. We can open closed off conversations, reduce defensiveness, and foster deeper trust, and so much more. You're going to get a boatload of amazing, actionable ideas, tips from our rockstar guest, Chuck, today. He's a leadership advisor, a coach. He has decades of experience helping leaders, teams, and organizations navigate complex communication challenges. He is the author of the book, Four Conversations, which is all about this. He is the background in architect and linguistics, which, of course, is all about communication again. And not to mention, he is an expert in emotional intelligence, awareness, and behavioral patterns. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a rockstar guest, and it brings me great pleasure to bring him here to you today. So, you know what? Without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation today with Chuck Wisner. Welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, a weekly podcast series dedicated to helping you hit peak performance across the 3 domains of leadership. Those being leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. This podcast couples my 20 years of military experience as a senior Canadian Army officer with world-class guests to bring you the most complete podcast of leadership going. And for more, feel free to check out our website at movingforwardleadership.com. And with that, let's get to the show. Chuck, sir, welcome to the show. So good to have you here today.
Thank you, Scott, for inviting me.
So we're talking about communication today in so many different ways. I always love starting off with this question with experts in that lane, and that is, human beings, we communicate like is the thing we do the most. Probably outside of breathing, we communicate the most. Yet we're terrible at it. Why? Please, can someone tell me why?
I think Yeah, and I like to say conversations are the one universal human tool that we have. And yet, no matter where we are, we have a lot of trouble with our conversations. So I think there's a couple pieces that create this dilemma. One is we grow up learning to communicate through our culture and our families and our education and then our experience. And we adopt patterns. We don't do it consciously, but we adopt the patterns of our parents, of our family, of our teachers, of our classmates, of our place of work. And the patterns become unconscious, more or less. So we often are on autopilot, not really knowing what we're doing in conversations. I like to say we're like fish in water. We're humans in conversation. We don't know the waters we're swimming in. So that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is after studying for many years and studying language and leadership, I realized that there weren't any books that sort of compiled the little different ideas that gave us sort of a blueprint of like, oh, here's how conversations work and here's how we can do them better.
Ooh, now you get me interested. So, like, how do conversations actually? How are they supposed to work? Because right now, I think 99.9% of us are flying by the seat of our pants here, because we're just doing it because we have conversations all day, every day, all day long. So of course we know what we're
Yeah.
doing, but apparently not. So please educate
Yeah.
me, sir.
Yeah. So, just a little backstory. I had a client, a long-term client of 5 or 7 years, and we were having a cocktail 5 years ago, and after we did some work, and he said, I love all this work, but there's all these pieces. There's emotional intelligence, and there's awareness and meditation and promises and all these pieces, but I don't know how to connect the dots. So that stuck with me. And then I realized one day walking on the beach that, there's a glue here that I learned when I was studying linguistics. That really is about different kinds of conversations that we're in every day, in and out of every day, but we don't know them. And one of my teachers said, if I took you from New England to Alaska and we learned the 30 names for snow that Inuits have, when you came back to New England, you would never see snow the same way. And the point of that is, if we have some new distinctions about what makes conversations and how they work and why they don't work, and the different types of conversations, we can't be in them innocently anymore. We have to take some responsibility and say, oh, I can do it this way, or there's a different conversation I can have. So the distinctions around the 4 types of conversations, which are laid out in my book, really are the beginning of that process of having a new set of tools and ideas to understand them.
That is super interesting. I am like, yeah, I'm frothing at the mouth now. So let's dive in, because like, I'm
Yeah.
thinking like real time here. Like, I've had a bad conversation, and obviously, sorry, let me rephrase. Not bad conversation, just the
Yeah.
conversation didn't go the way I expected, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, I probably could use some tools that you're about to educate me on here. So let's dive deeper into what some of these tools are, and
Mm-hmm.
how leaders out there can employ them. Because no matter what, no matter who you talk to, no matter which company you go to, organization you go to, when you ask them, hey, what's one of your main problems, I guarantee it, 9 chances out of 10, 99 times out of 100, someone's going to mention communication.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously leaders need more tools in their toolbox for this. So I'd love to hear what you got to say now.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't I do this? Why don't I just really quickly lay out the 4 types of conversations, and then we
Yeah,
can do it. We can do a deep dive into
love
them
it. Yeah, I love it. Let's do it.
as it intrigues you, or not.
Yeah, no, I'm intrigued. So let's go.
So the first conversation is storytelling, and that is really. Hold on, my wife. I'm being delivered a cup of coffee. We can edit that.
Oh, lucky man.
Yeah, really, really. I meant to do this before I got
Does
online, and then I forgot. So she just delivered it. So
does she deliver here?
All right. Thank you. Sorry about that.
All good.
So the storytelling conversation is the primary conversation. And that is because we as individuals and we as cultures and societies live through stories. I mean, there's stories of fiction and that we enjoy and we get entertained by movies, but in fact, our laws, our money, the rules we have to live by, those are all stories that we've adopted as cultures. So there's that part, and then the other part is we as individuals have unconsciously adopted stories about ourselves and about other people, some of which serve us really well, and some of us really don't serve us well. And so, for instance, I grew up with a grandfather who was pretty much a redneck, and kept telling me when I didn't want to skin the deer or I didn't want to do certain things, or if I showed my emotions, that I wasn't a big enough man. Well, guess what? I adopted that story unconsciously because he was the adult and I was a kid, and what the hell did I know, right? But I lived with that story until I did my studies in language and was able to bust it. Which meant I was constantly having this internal dialogue. Oh, not good enough, not big enough man, all those things. So storytelling is really powerful because every time we go into a meeting as a leader, everybody that comes into that meeting is coming with a story. And what happens is our egos get involved, and then we get attached to our story, and then we have an identification with our story. And that's why we sort of get defensive and why we end up in the battles that we end up in. So that's a really short hit on storytelling. However, if you do your work around storytelling and you recognize that your stories aren't the only story, your stories aren't the truth, uh, your stories are made up of your emotions, facts, and opinions. But if you go into a meeting with a closed fist, we go into a meeting which should be a collaborative conversation, which is number two. If you go in with a closed fist and I go in with a closed fist, we're just trying to prove ourselves right and prove the other person wrong, right? And there's very little listening because instead of listening, we're reloading our next response. So if we can, what I say is instead of having a closed fist and this is what I think and this has to be this way and I'm right and you're wrong, if we can open our hand and reveal the thinking under our position. So in other words, we say, I have concerns, I have some desires. Are there power issues? I have standards that I'm making this judgment based on. That is a different way that opens up a conversation, which I call the collaborative conversation, where I can learn from you and you can learn from me. And we really can listen, because what listening means is I'm able to absorb your position and your perspective. And if I really do that, I might say, oh God, Scott, what you just said made me think differently. I never thought of it that way. All right. And now we're in a mutual learning conversation. So those are the first two conversations. Maybe I should stop there and you might have a question or two.
I got multiple things. First, I got a story about collaborative conversations.
Yeah. Okay.
Which will, for the audience, drive the point home. I don't know if you know much about my background, but I'm actually Canadian Army by day, and I do this on the evenings. I won't get into too much detail just because one, I can't, and two, I just people, I know military people listen, and I don't want people connect the dots. But I had one supervisor once, and we were having a meeting about something relatively higher stakes, and we're discussing, of course, emotions are high and stuff like this, but it doesn't matter with this guy. It didn't matter if it was high stakes or not. He always would cut you off. And he always had that approach of, yes. However, and he just constantly like, you couldn't even spit out like 3 words and he would be there trying to interject. I remember one day I was just, I'll call it spade a spade. I was pissed off with it.
Yeah.
I had enough. And I just let him go. I stopped talking. I sat back and kind of crossed my arms. And I often cross my arms because I just find it comfortable, not because I was closed off. But this time I was actually closed off. And I listened to him ramble on. And then he finally stopped. and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he's like, well, so? I said, well, sir, if I could have finished what I was saying, I would have said this, that, and the other thing. And he just went, oh, you're right. But he never, I don't think he ever clued into what he was doing or what,
Right.
what the effect he was having. But I say this to the audience for you to listen, like, if for you to check yourself to see if you're acting that way,
Yeah.
because maybe you are, and I don't think he actually knew he was doing it. Didn't actively know that he was doing it. And
Yeah.
it's probably tied into your earlier point. There's some kind of story there for him that's causing him to act that way. But at one point, you just, enough's enough. Like, I'm done. You don't know what you're talking about here because I'm expert in this domain. You're not. So
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. So
shut up.
he I would say, his pattern, and I love to talk about our communication style as patterns because it's a little less judgmental than saying I have a habit. If we can look at it as a pattern, we can go, oh, I have a pattern that I probably unconsciously adopted from my dad or my, a teacher or my, a leader. So if we can look at our pattern and go, wow, that's serving me or not serving me. So his ego is attached to his having the answers. You're the leader that you were talking to. So he's identified with being the smart guy, with being the leader. And then what that means to him is he should have the answers. Totally unaware of the of the consequence for you, because he wasn't reading the signals. But at some point, when you just went silent, all of a sudden that was a wake up call for him, right? So you actually did him a really great favor. You sort of you woke him up out of sleep talking. Uh,
Well, maybe for about 32 seconds.
yeah,
Because
right.
I still worked
Yeah,
with him for a bit longer and nothing changed,
yeah,
let me tell you.
that's right. He did.
I think he just realized I just didn't have that much time for him.
Yeah, no. Well, that's a great point, Scott, because when people do want to change their pattern and do want to try having a different style of communication or leadership communication, it takes some work because I don't know how old this guy was. Let's say he's 40, just make up a number. He's had that pattern probably for 20 years or 30 years, right? And so all of a sudden I knock him over the head with a 2x4 and say, dude, you're really shutting everybody down and good luck having a great collaboration with them or getting ideas out of them because you're shutting them down. So knock him over the head. And then it takes him to go, oh my God, I don't want to do that anymore. But there's no magical switch. I can't just go, okay, you pay me $10,000 and I'll push the magical switch. I'd be rich if there was a switch. But so it takes a practice. He would have to say, I want to change this, and he has to practice. So it's a good story that's really illustrative of how our egos our egos sort of put us in a fog. Or identify with our being smart or our position, and then when we get, like, you gave him a little moment of awareness by your reaction. And reaction is sort of like brings us out of the fog. But guess what? As soon as you weren't in the room, the fog set back in for him.
Man, you just nailed that out of the park. Like, as soon as you said his ego was tied to knowing and having the answers, I'm like, how the hell did I not figure that one out? But being in it at that moment, but this is this is a few years ago now, so I've had time, and this is not the first time I've told that particular story, but I've never actually clued into that his ego was tied to having all the answers, and
Yeah.
maybe now that's part of the fog of, like, that's obviously there's some emotional charge in there, like, still I get frustrated just because it was just such a, I don't know if painful is the right word, but it was like a painful experience of just
Yeah.
constantly being cut off when you're trying to just simply talk.
Yeah, and it's disrespectful. Not that they aren't even aware they're being disrespectful. They think, they're taking charge and they have the answers, and it's disrespectful. So your emotional trigger is totally normal and relevant.
Right.
The question is, what do we do with it? But you had a moment there where you said, you know what, I'm just not going to play this game the same way,
Yeah,
and
true
you
story.
and you and you changed the dance, and it woke him up for a millisecond.
Yeah, for sure. Now we've sprinkled in storytelling. I use the story there. I'll talk about collaborative, but I want to go back to storytelling because I thought that was super interesting. The stories
Yeah,
that we tell ourselves.
yeah.
What I want to do is change the script a little bit because you're focused super on ourselves, which don't
Hmm.
get me wrong, uber important. But my question to you is, what how can we leverage when we figure out when what the story that one of our team members is telling themselves.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
If that becomes, if we suddenly we are aware, like, wait now, like they have this reaction. I was not expecting that in this scenario. New scenario pops up, similar type of reaction, which was unexpected, and you realize more and more, like, okay, this is what they're telling themselves in these situations. Now, how can we as leaders leverage that to obviously make the situation, get the best possible / positive outcome out of it?
Yeah, yeah. So in my book, um, there are the four conversations, but there's another key, really important uh, trick in my book, and it's called Four Archetypal Questions that help us. Like if you have a judgment that's really negative and it's not serving you well, these four questions, you can deconstruct your story and say, okay, what use these questions to really understand what's inside your fist, basically. But we can also use them to when someone is coming at us with a fist, instead of meeting them with a fist, we open them up by asking them honest, open questions to really sincerely understand their thinking under their stuck position. And the four things are very simple. And if people don't take anything else out of this podcast, write this down on a sticky note and keep it nearby because it's a really useful trick. The four are every judgment we have, most conversations we're going into with a strong position, we have some desire that we haven't expressed or some goal that we haven't expressed. Like, I want this conversation to go my way, or I want this to be the end result, right? So sometimes those are good, sometimes they're not, because our desires, while they can inspire us to do things, they can also have us in a battle with reality, which means I want this to happen. Like a client of mine wanted to have that next VP spot that he thinks he's so well deserved. But the reality was that no one saw him as a VP, right? But it drove him crazy because he said, by his ego, he said, I should have that job. When he didn't get it, he was crushed. So desires is number one. Number two is what are concerns we have. So every judgment you have and every conversation you're in, every person has a concern about tomorrow. I don't want to next week to feel like today, or I don't want to make the same mistake tomorrow that I made today, right? Or I don't want us to make the same blunder with the project that we did last week. The third one is power. So every conversation you're in, there are power issues, authority issues. In the military, there's a very strict rules hierarchy of power, right? You don't mess with that. And same is true in hierarchies in business. Give we all give the boss's voice more authority than, say, our colleague, right? Um, that's There's goodness about that, and there's a trap in that because authority, with leaders with authority in their voice, unawares, like your buddy that you were talking to or your leader you were talking to, he was unaware that the power of his voice was as strong as it was, right? That he was shutting down you and other people. And the last one is standards. Every judgment we have, are based on some morals, some values, some standards we hold that make sense to us. Might be true, might not be true, but they make sense to us of what's good, bad, right, wrong, pretty, ugly, whatever it is. These judgments are all those values that we hold. And so, if we take an example of let's say you had a reaction to your boss or your leader, that your reaction was, this guy is really a jerk, and you know what, he's I don't want to work with him anymore, he's impossible, blah blah blah. Well, I could work with you individually and I could say, okay, let's take that apart a little bit. What are your desires hidden inside your judgment? What would you say your desire was that was giving you that trigger?
You asked me like in that particular instant.
Yeah.
It was, we're prepping for a mission, so it was basically
Let's
get it right.
Let's get it right. Let's get the job done. I know what I have. I have standards that standards. You had the expertise. You have standards about what good looked like or what success would look like, right? What was your concern in the face of the conversation?
My concern was that we were going to screw it up and something bad would happen for sure.
You'd pay the price, right? Right. Tomorrow would be bad. Yeah. And this was in the military, right? Right. So there was an authority issue where your ability to speak up, he didn't make it safe for you to disagree with him because of his power issue.
100%.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I propose that had you done that little bit of work before the conversation, not that you knew it was coming, but in the future you can do it, you can surface each one of those things had a little golden nugget in it that you can bring into the conversation. For instance, desires. Sir, I really want us to succeed, and I have some standards, what that looks like based on my experience. Can I share them with you?
I hear you. I 100% hear you. I don't want to say the word, but I'm going to say it, and that word is but.
But
So, once you're done sipping your coffee, we're going to replay that, and I will give you a first taste of the experience that I had.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead, say what you just said, and then I'll show you what the experience I had.
Okay, sir, I really want us to succeed in this mission.
Yeah, so do I, Scott. Absolutely, you're 100% right here. We got to go. We got to do this right.
Okay, good. So sir, can I just tell you, based on my experience, what I think
so this is what I'm thinking.
We should be approach this.
This is what I'm thinking here. This is where we need to go. So
yeah.
So I think you're getting the picture of that particular experience. I would offer that was probably an extreme case.
Yeah.
But that is literally the experience I had. So you could probably now even more so appreciate my reaction at the end.
Yeah. So you're right. There are extreme cases where no matter what we do, they aren't going to change. They aren't going to move, right? But you do your best, and if they don't want to open their hand and have a collaboration with you, well, you couldn't walk away in that situation, but you went silent, and that changed it, right? But there are people that are going to be more open to you saying, hey, let me share my expertise because I really care about the end of the mission. And my concern is that if we don't do steps A, B, and C, we might fail.
No. Don't get me wrong. Those 4 things are absolute golden.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you a better appreciation of what I went through.
Who you were dealing with. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But like, that's golden. Like, if you think about it, like if we approach conversations in that way of like, hey, this is my concern, and this is what I'm looking for, and just kind of outlining that, I think conversations could definitely move forward in a more positive way. All these undertones and nuances people are trying to figure out, and it's just so
Yeah.
difficult some days.
Yeah. Yeah. And the closed fist idea, um, when we want to share those four things, like here are my concerns, my standards, power, when we want to share those, it that's that takes some humility, and it also takes some
Mm,
vulnerability, because you have to say, I might not be right, but here's how I'm thinking. Prove me wrong. Now
right.
prove me wrong, or let's share ideas and see what we can learn from each other. That's takes humility and some vulnerability. Now, your original question was, how do we do with someone that's really not wanting to play, right?
Well,
And
no, it wasn't that. It was what I had asked earlier was about how do we I don't know, maybe leverage. I can't think of a better word, but
mhm,
when we realize we've figured out the story that's what someone is telling themselves in their
yes,
head, and
yes,
you know
yes.
that, and you want to use that to your. I know it's coming across really wrong, but use it to your advantage. Obviously, not to manipulate them, but for
No,
good, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's,
yeah.
you hear what I'm
So,
saying?
yeah, definitely. So, I went off on a tangent with your example, but to illustrate the four questions, right? But with other people that are like stuck, or they have a story that you want to sort of help them help them bust it or deconstruct it or understand it, right? You use those same four things in the form of questions to them. Help me understand your thinking. What are you concerned about? Help me understand when you say it'll never work, what standards are you basing that on? What experience do you have that makes you think that? Those are questions. What you're really doing is you're taking their open fist and you're asking a question. You're prying their you're prying their fingers open. Like, what are your concerns? What are your standards? What do you want the outcome to be? Right. And if you do that sincerely, not to prove them right or wrong, but to really understand their position, a lot of people will all of a sudden go, "Oh, well, yeah, well, I'm happy to tell you how I'm thinking." Right. Um, and then the more we model a humble thing about opening our hand, there's a little contagion in it. They go, "Oh, he's making it safe for me to bare my soul too." Right. So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's
Sorry to cut you off there, but
no, no, you go ahead.
uh, and then that leads to establishing that sense of psychological safety where people feel, ability to contribute, they feel the ability to challenge. And as I've learned through doing this podcast, that's one of the three core components of a high performing team is that
Yeah,
psychological safety.
that's right. Yeah, right. And the best a leader can do is thinking everyone comes into the meeting with a story, purposefully have a very conscious collaborative conversation and say, okay, let's hear all the different perspectives in the room, because that's how we're going to get smart together. Versus, here's what I think. I'm really passionate about what I think. Here's what I think, and everyone shuts down because, well, if Joe the boss thinks that, then I'm not going to chime in because I'm not going to disagree with the boss.
Yeah. I hear 100% what you're saying. I agree with it fully, almost.
Hmm.
The Because I literally had this conversation today with my team. I literally had this conversation today with my team because I put the leadership style spectrum up. I explained, the different styles to them from, laissez-faire to authoritarian and in the middle,
Yeah.
and everything in between. I said, hey, right here is where I'm generally at. My comfy zone is right around here. Collaborative. Hey, you guys are experts in your domain. Go forth, do good things, come back, provide me the input I need, and stuff like this. But I
Hmm.
explained to them, depending on the situation, I will adjust where I land on that spectrum. And there's two things which are going to push me left, as in, more authoritarian, towards the
Authoritarian.
more authoritarian. One is risk. So, we talked in terms of risk to mission and risk to people. Um, and the other thing which I find is time availability,
Right.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And when I feel like I don't have a lot of time for that collaborative approach, I'm sorry, I'm going to make the call how I see it, the best I see it at that time. We're going to go forth. Um, Yet, if new information shows up later down the line, that will contradict that decision, well, I got a new decision to make. And depending
Yes.
on the time availability there, I'll, adjust, or, we'll deal with it at that time. So that's kind of how I see it, but 1,000,000% agree with everything you've said thus far.
Yeah. So just a minor tweak to what you said, because I get a response often like, and then the next conversation is a creative conversation, and then commitment conversations, which we might get to, might not get to, but the minor tweak is people tell me we don't have time, and I'm not talking about a 4 hour offsite or a 2 hour meeting to do collaboration. I'm saying, in order to me make the best decision, we're time constrained here, and there's risk factors. I'd love to hear different perspectives so that I can make the better decision. Let's take 5 minutes and go around, and anybody's welcome to say, what might I be missing? How might we be thinking differently so that I can make a better decision? Again, that's creating in a short period of time that psychological safety. Like, speak now or forever hold your peace.
But what it would offer is, and again, my approach, and don't get me wrong, like I really do appreciate that. Fortunately, I just was not in a situation where it's like, all right, everyone around the table, okay, let's take 5 minutes, and
Yeah, right.
just the scenario in front of us.
Yeah.
But what I did say to them afterwards was, hey, if you don't agree, or if you need more clarification, come see me and we'll just talk this out.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
excuse me. Just and I left that door open, and now, like, it's there. It's waiting to see if anyone wants to, make that walk through it. And I don't mean that as in, like, come forth me in front of me and let's talk about this, i.e. I'm
Yeah,
going to tell you how it is. But no, let's have a conversation here,
yeah,
and I'll let you
yeah.
know what I was thinking and how I saw it. And I would still love your input at that time, because now, as I said earlier, if we end up down the road and new information comes out and I find myself in a different decision space, well, now I'll take that in consideration 1,000,000%. It's still
Yeah.
valid. It's just
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
valid at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the decision process that you're talking about, having to make a decision, that's really about the commitment conversation, because the commitment conversation is the action
Let's dive
conversation.
in.
Is who's going to do what, by when and how,
Right.
and we love storytelling, and we love the commitment conversation, which is the action conversation. Right. Um, and the trouble with the commitment conversation are twofold. One, generally inside of hierarchies and in culture in general, we tend to be addicted to yes. Like, the boss says, can you get me some slides for Monday morning? Or can you get me a report for Monday morning? And the person's probably thinking, oh my God, I have to spend the weekend working and blah, blah. But they say, sure, no problem. Okay. Now a promise is made. Promises have consequences. Monday morning comes, I deliver the report. You, Scott, take the report. You look at it, my 10-page report. You rip off the last pages. Oh, this summary is perfect. And I'm thinking, Crimenetti, if I had known that, I wouldn't have spent 10 hours over the weekend. I would have given you a summary, and spent 3 hours on it. Right. But the person that you received my thing thought, oh God, I gave him this assignment. He did all this work. He wasted his time, and I don't know if I can trust him, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, good Lord, I spent all this time. There's no appreciation. But you know what really happened? We made a sloppy promise. We made a sloppy handshake. That's what really happened. And so in my book, I sort of take apart this conversation and say, here's how it works. It starts with request. We can make a yes, a no, a counteroffer. We can clarify, all for the purpose of making a better promise. Because guess what? A promise fulfilled builds trust. A promise broken breaks trust.
I
So
loved how you stated, yes comes with consequences.
yeah.
As,
And we just do it sort of automatically. Like I say,
yeah,
we sleep talk our yes because we don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or because of the power issues, or we don't feel safe, or we don't want to admit that we don't know how to do it. A million reasons. But a clarifying question will help me understand what you want, who's it for, Do you want bullet points? Do you want you want prose? You want a poem?
Yeah.
You want pictures? Help me understand so that I can fulfill this promise. It takes 5 minutes.
1,000,000%. And what I would add to that is I think we could still keep the consequence bit that you mentioned, but just reframe it of like, yeah, I could do that. But here's the things that I won't be able to do instead of that.
Yeah. Well, I
You know?
thank you for that, because the one part of that commitment dance conversation that we forget, that we don't do well, we know we get addicted to yes, we avoid no, but no has to be
Mm-hmm.
part of our vocabulary. Maybe I'm not competent to do it. Maybe whatever. But the third option is a counteroffer.
Yes.
So if you make a request to me and I ask you some clarifying questions, do you need it Monday morning? What's the format? Who's it for? What are you trying to accomplish? I get all those answers and I go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But I can't get you to Monday morning. I can get it to you by 1:00 Monday. Does that work for you? That's a counteroffer,
Yep.
right?
Yep, for sure.
Or in your situation with your lovely leader, you might say, I can get it to you Monday, but by my experience, I think that format doesn't make sense. Maybe we should have it in a format that our guys can understand, and would look like this. That'd be a pretty powerful counteroffer that he might shoot you for, but
If I could get it out.
yeah, right. If there'd be space in the conversation, right?
If there would be space in the conversation is 1,000,000% correct. Oh, this is awesome, Chuck. I'm loving it. So, we've hit on storytelling, we've hit on
Yeah,
collaborative, we've hit on commitment, we've talked
yeah,
about your 4 questions. We've
yeah,
not touched creative.
yeah,
Kind of part of me wants to dive into creative, but the other part of me wants to leave a taste in the mouth of the audience to get more. So I'm going to
yeah.
leave that up to you as the author, as the speaker. Are we going to dive into creative, or are we going to leave that taste of them wanting?
Well, I'd be happy to come back and talk more as questions might arise, or people might give you questions. It's timing wise. I think what are we in, 35 minutes or something?
No, no, timing's fine. It's just a
Okay.
matter of let's
Yeah.
dive in. I feel like we're diving in, so let's dive in. Let's talk creative quick. So let's talk. Because
Okay.
I will admit, creativity I think is one of my weak points.
Mm.
So January
Hmm.
baby, Capricorn. Not that I'm big into astrological stuff, but
It's fair.
I'm highly analytical, process driven. Shocker, I know, for a guy who's a senior army officer. Uh,
Yeah.
but creativity, like this cat ain't drawing anything. Let me tell you, if you want a stick man, I got you covered. Anything beyond that,
Yeah.
no, not happening.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Well,
let's hear these conversations.
so there's a couple components here. There's the individual piece that you're talking about, whether you naturally have or lean or prefer your left brain, um, which is linear and rational and all that. Other people, my wife's an artist. I'm formerly I was trained as an architect, so we have a right brain. I'd say in architecture, I have a right brain balance, because you have to have both. You have to make sure a building makes sense, and then you have to, if you want to create and make something beautiful, you have to have both. So there's that personal thing, but then there's the idea in conversations that if you and I have, or you and your team have, a really good collaborative conversation where you're hearing different perspectives and you're learning from each other, and you have a few aha moments like, oh, I never thought of it that way, Scott, like that. What happens in a good collaborative conversation is what we're doing is we're making space in the conversation for ideas to bubble up. And we've all had this experience where you're in a conversation with a friend or with someone that you have a good relationship with, and you're just talking, say, wow, and this and that, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I never thought of it that way, Scott. And oh, you know what, now that you said that, maybe we could do this. And there's an idea that bubbles up that wasn't yours and wasn't mine, but came out of our conversation. That is a creative conversation, but it stems from our ability to be collaborative and be open and be learning from each other. So that's one piece. And what that is fundamentally is about, are we willing to slow down enough in a conversation that we can explore possibilities. In other words, you have a position, they have a position, you have a collaboration. We want to get to that action. We want to get to who's going to do what. But I say slow down so you can say before you choose or before you take action, say, can we just take 5 minutes, brainstorm? What are 5 possibilities that we might be missing? And that for me is a willingness to wonder, a willingness to go, is there something we might be missing? Is there something, a curiosity that we might be missing something? That for me is about possibilities, right? And we all have that capacity. It's just whether we give ourselves permission to to open that door, you know. So the creative conversation is a little more complex than the others. It's not as straightforward. It's about our intuition. It's about our left brain, right brain. It's about possibilities, about wonder. So it's a good one. And then let me just finish with this. If we love our stories, we love our commitments and our action, but what we do is because we love those two, we do a conversational bypass. And we bypass the middle two. We bypass collaboration and we bypass possibilities. And so your decisions are missing that juicy, productive back and forth that might bring up new ideas.
I think if I was to summarize that, go back to something you said earlier, and that's ego. If we let our ego go, then we're going to be more willing to ask those questions,
Right.
because we we'll think that we don't necessarily have all the right things covered. We haven't looked at all the angles. So it's actually interesting how you talk about creativity, because I always, someone says creativity to me, I automatically go to art and drawing, architecture, those things.
Yeah.
But I will often ask that question, like, what are we missing? What are we not considering?
Yes.
Who, and in my career, and we talk about psychological safety here, and I interviewed Dr. Tim Clark a long time ago on the show, and I talk about his work all the time, the 4 stages of psychological safety. It took me a while to clue in to make these connections, but stage 4 he refers to is challenger safety, and that is where the team has the ability to challenge you, challenge the plan, challenge whatever it is. It took me a long time, but as I reflected on my career, my work, and I was never in, but I have worked with special forces in the past, and in talking with them and when I work with them, I've come to realization that that's how they operate. They will go and they'll sit. Obviously the leader is in charge of, the commander is in charge of the plan and their mission. But they'll sit and everybody will go through they'll go through that plan, and everyone has the space to poke holes into it and, challenge
What about
it.
this? What about that?
What about that? What about this? What about that? I'm not too sure about this. Can we walk through this part? And the goal is to get the best possible outcome, the best possible plan, and make sure everyone's ready and everyone knows everyone's part, because they talk about time and space. They don't have time to do redos or anything like that.
Right.
But that's how they operate, and this is exactly the same type of thing. It's that creative, like, what are we missing here? What have I not considered?
Yeah, and the plan might hold together, but there might be one element that says if we do X, there's a risk of Y. Can we
100%.
can we eliminate that risk in a way that we haven't thought of before? That's the wonder part. I wonder what else is possible, and I don't mean wonder in a fuzzy way. I mean, I wonder what else might be possible.
And along those lines, and actually, we're going to tie this conversation beautifully as we wrap up here. Back to that, the guy that was cutting me off. When I drafted the plan for that operation, that mission to support it, because I'm a logistics guy, I do to support and stuff like this. I got my team together in our little conference room. I had them around. I walked in, I dropped it on the table, said, "You got 45 minutes, tear it apart. I'll be back." And I just walked out.
Perfect. You know
right?
what you
And
did
that was
there? Of the 4 questions, you removed your authority. You removed your
100%.
voice. So they could, and I was tough leader sometimes. I'm working with their team and I see the dynamics. I tell the leader, you're excused for 2 hours. Go away.
Get out. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I want to
Because,
talk to these folks,
well, people
honestly.
act differently when the boss is around.
Right. That's the authority piece. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, power.
It could be something like that, or it could be something small like today. We had a little retirement luncheon. So me and my right hand man, we showed up, had some certificates, said some good words, and then I said, you know what, guys, see you later. Enjoy yourselves, because no one, no one wants the boss around. Like I'm sure, a number of them would have been perfectly fine and happy that we stuck around. Probably would have enjoyed it, but overall, I was like, no, it will
Ab-
not be the same if I'm here, and I
yeah,
want you guys to have this moment together before this one person says farewell and retires. So
yeah.
go forth, go
That's
ahead.
good for you. Yeah, good for you.
Chuck, this conversation has exceeded 1 million-fold expectations, and not to say expectations were low, but it's been fantastic. And we covered a lot of ground. And I
Yeah,
guess one last question before we wrap up here is like, is there anything we didn't cover that you think would be important for the listener to take away from, or maybe one last
yeah,
piece that they can walk away with today?
yeah. I'd say, as far as learning to do these conversations differently, I'd say track your patterns, like you're tracking a wild animal, but without judgment. Like I used to have an anger issue with my kids when my kids are grown now, when they were young, and I had to track that and say, you know what, that comes from. I adopted that from my father unconsciously. So I had a pattern of losing my temper, but that's not how I wanted to father. But I tracked that and I said, you know what, that was my dad. I don't have to be my dad. I can be my own man. So track your patterns. The ones that aren't serving you well, investigate them and go, wow, can I change that? How would I change that? What that does is it increases our awareness. So if ego is the fog, awareness is the light. Right? We want to increase our awareness, right? And if we do that, we enter conversations with more curiosity, with more humility. And so we can ask questions to really understand and really open up a conversation. We are trained to be advocates. And I think we need to balance that with a new appreciation of questions, because that can open up a conversation. It can even open up a closed fist.
Love it. And I always say here on the podcast, leadership is all about asking the right questions, not knowing all the answers. So beautifully said,
Absolutely.
sir.
Yeah.
Final thing of the show. How can people find you, follow you, be part of your journey? Shameless plug. Have at it. All about you.
Yeah. My website is chuckwisner.com, ChuckWisner. And they can get a free PDF of the introduction of my book. Just scroll down a little bit and you put in your email. Believe me, I won't email you back if you just give me your email. You can also get in touch with me at the bottom of my website. There's a place to contact Chuck, ask me questions. I do work with people individually as well as with leaders and teams. I'm light on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, but I'm not a heavy user. But when I publish, like I just had to publish an article in Fast Company published 2 days ago. So like I'll put that on my social media, let people know I have a new article. And that was on leadership, actually, that article.
No, it's awesome. And for you, the listeners, always, it's easy. Just go to leaddon'tboss.com/the episode number in digits. And those things and everything else that we talked about will be in the show notes there for you. Again, Chuck, sir, thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for your amazing wisdom. This has been fantastic. I need to really, I've skimmed through the book. I need to dive deep into the book is what I've learned today. So
Yeah.
thank you. And thank you for a
Yeah.
copy of it. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
and thank you for having me. And reach out anytime. Question, curiosity, reach out.
Awesome. Will do.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. thank you for supporting the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. But you know what you could do to truly support the podcast? And no, that's not leaving a rating and review. It's simply helping a friend. And that is helping a friend by sharing this episode with them if you think this would resonate with them and help them elevate their performance level, whether that's within themselves, their teams, or their organization. So do that. Help me, help a friend, win-win all around. And hey, you look like a great friend at the same time. So just hit that little share button on your app, and then feel free to fire this episode to anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Finally, there's always more. There's always more lessons around being the highest performing leader that you can possibly be, whether that's for yourself, your team, or your organization. So why don't you subscribe? Subscribe to the show via movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. And until next time, lead, don't boss, and thanks for coming out. Take care now.